Hello and congratulations for coming to chapter 3 where we are going to spend a lot of time creating foliage, and we are going to create AAA foliage for this scene so that we are able to take this scene further. But one thing to note is that when I started to do the second channel UV on this and re-imported this using the static mesh editor in here, right here, clicking and re-import, it resulted in some of them losing their nanite. So if you encounter to see something like this, just go and re-enable nanite. That is so easy. So let's go into nanite visualization mode, and now is everything here has become nanite. And for these trees also I decided to turn them nanite, of course for now, because they are so polygon heavy, so I decided to make them nanite to run a little bit cheaper. So now if I go and start playing in here, I'm really getting no performance hit and no performance impact. So perfect and without any problem. Okay, in this chapter, and it's going to be a long chapter, we're going to create foliage. And the foliage, of course, is going to belong to the tropical area because this is a beach somehow, and we're going to create something that resembles that. And of course, the main tree type that we are going to be creating is the palm trees. You see, in here also to block out, we created the palm trees because it's the main characteristics of this area. And we're going to create some palm trees, of course, some regular palm trees, and some tailored palm trees like these ones that you see here. And of course, we're going to create some kinds of palm shrubs, something like this that you see here. They're not palm trees in the essence. Of course they are, but they are some kind of shrub things, not the tree itself. So we're going to make some variations as well to make sure that we cover a lot of things about palm trees. And these palm trees are a little bit harder than most types of trees. And the next vegetation type that we are going to be creating is these ferns. And these ferns are common in every scene that you are going to create. But of course, in these tropical areas, just like this one, you see a lot of ferns being here. And we're going to create a lot of ferns as well. Of course, we create one or two variation and make them strong enough to fit our purposes. So the ferns are going to be the second type of foliage. And for the next, we will go for these banana trees as well. Of course, we're going to create a small banana trees, but something really to give this a little bit of foliage feeling because these banana trees are also common in tropical areas. And these are going to be the main types of trees and foliages and vegetation that we create, and we create them in such a way that we can reuse them as much as possible. So the main focus of this course is on foliage creation for tropical areas. And we're going to first create the high poly, then texture them, and then bake them into a single plane, and start to cut out the plane, and foliage can then be extracted from that plane and modeled out. So bear with me, you're going to get a lot of knowledge from this course in terms of foliage creation as well. So let's go to Blender and start creating the blockouts. So here we are in Blender, and as always I prep the scene. We have the scale mannequin in here, and this is a simple 2x2 plane, 2 meter by 2 meter plane. And in the last we're going to bake all of things onto this single plane. So we really do not care about the topology for now because all of it is going to be baked down into this single plane. So let's start to visualize our reference, and we're going to start with this fern, which is a bit more common than most of the foliages that we're going to do, and it's a bit easier to work on. So we're going to work with this, and when we made sure that we get the hang of the rest, we go and start create the rest of the foliages as well. So when you look at ferns, you see there's a lot of modularity going on. We can start the fern by this single leaf and couple of stems, and we really do not have to sculpt every single leaf you see in here. It takes forever. If you want to sculpt this, it's going to take a lot, and it's not really efficient because at the end it's going to be baked down into a signal plane, and it's not really going to be so prominent. So why bothering sculpting this? Because this is very repetitive. So if you look at the leaves, individual leaves, you ultimately see that there's a little bit of pattern going on in here. So we're going to divide this into some sections. These individual leaves, which are here, these smaller stems, which are responsible for holding down these individual leaves, and then these create a cluster and get attached to this main stem in here. So let's go and start creating, and we're gonna be modular on this. We're gonna create a single leaf and we're gonna sculpt it so that we are happy with the shape and everything, and then we're going to duplicate it all across to create a cluster. And when we make sure that the cluster is fine, we create a couple of variations from the cluster and start to create the main ferns as well. So let's go and create. First, I'm going to create this bigger stem in here. So it's very easy. All you need to do is dragging out a single plane. Let me take this out. Later on, we'll create a plane for that. So we're gonna take a single plane and let's visualize the face normals. It's all right. Okay. And if you look at the stem here, the stem is thick when it begins and thins out at the beginning. Okay, and we're going to replicate this. So let's go into turning off the normal visualizing mode and start it. Okay, to make what we want, we need to really do just some resolution adding in here. So let's take it and let's take this and go into proportional editing by holding down O. So when I try to shrink this down, it's going to affect other areas as well. So let's take this and bring this up. Okay, this is a good starting point. And now what I'm going to do is adding a segment in here and bring it down. Of course, I'm going to turn off the proportional editing. Okay, something like this. And let's give it a chamfer by holding down Control and B. It's in my case Control and B. Okay, let's first make it shade smooth. And now that I'm looking at it, let's look at the reference. You see there's something going on in here and I'm going to replicate that. So let's go for these edges. First, create an edge in between and take these two edges out and bring them out just a bit. We want to create this. Okay, now that I'm looking at it, I'm happy with it, but I need to make it thinner just a bit. And every time I do a rotation, rescaling, anything, I do a transform all to make sure that every transform is in its place. So let's take this and start to shrink down in this area. I want just a bit. Okay, and now let's go and we want to give this a bit of thickness. So let's go into modifiers and solidify. And this solidify is perfect for adding the thickness that we want. Okay, let's make it something like this and let's add subdivision surface as well. Give it some subdivisions. Okay, now it's start to turning out realistic. Of course, when you start to add details inside ZBrush, it really goes a far way to making this something realistic. So let's come into here and I want to add a subdivision in here as well. So let's apply the solidify before doing anything. So let's see what I can do. Okay, and now apply the solidify, and I'm gonna go into this mode, and for this one, for this edge, let's pick shortest path until here, down the bottom, and give it a small bubble so that it makes it a bit thicker. Okay, let's look at it, and I'm really happy with how the shape is going. And let's do some freeform scaling here, not to make it look so CG. Just add irregularities wherever possible. Okay, let's inspect in here, and I feel like I can really, yeah, this was good. And let's hide these two as well. Let me go to that side. I'm going to target, well, this to this, and then this to this, so that we have that in between. Okay, and now let's take these and bring them down. So I can go to box X-ray and select them and bring them down just a bit. I really do not want it to be so depthy. So this is about it, and let's see what we can do more. Okay, I'm happy with this. Let's copy this and bring it over and start to create another variation. For example, let me take these and give it a bit of profile that is different to this one. It's not so necessary, but I'm going to make it as beautiful and as authentic as possible. Okay, another variation, and we created the first stem, and I'm going to use this stem for this very beginning as well. If you look at this main reference that we have here, you see there's a stem here, and I'm going to sculpt this stem for this part, for this middle part, and as well as this part in here as well, because it's so hidden and the details are not so obvious, so that I can use this for that part as well. So now what I'm going to do is creating a couple of leaves from this section. Okay, let's see what the shape is, and we can pretty much create it using a simple plane. So let's make it a smaller, and this is good. And let's apply the transformations and make this top part a smaller, give this a bubble, and I'm going to bring this up just a bit and bring this part down and shade smooth it as well. I'm going to create something like this, but top down. You see, we should look at something like this, not these ones. That's in other direction, but you get the meaning, what I'm going to create. So let's take this and bring it out and give it a chamfer. And later on in ZBrush, I'll try to add a lot of details. Just bear with me. So for this part, let's go and try to bring this out and try to give it a circular shape. And for this one as well, I'm going to give it a pointy edge, something like this. Of course, this is a starting to look hard surface, but we're going to fix that anyway. Okay, this is good for our purposes. And now let's give it a solidify and give it some subdivision surfaces. Let's increase the solidify and apply all of them. Okay, and now let's take this and duplicate it a couple of times. And we're creating some variations from this and then duplicate it all across to create clusters. And when we make clusters, we create the whole stem of fern out of this. So something like this. Okay, I believe this is good for the starting point of this one. Okay, now that we created the initial kit for this, let's create a collection for these and call them fern so that we do not lose them. And I can do something else and do a batch rename on these and set name fern, and I renamed all of them to fern so that I do not lose them. So close out the folder, and now let's go for other ones. And let's go for this. And you see the shape of the stem is somehow similar to that, but a bit different. So I'm going to create that from a single plane. Okay, and this is somehow similar to that, but a bit different. So let's make it a bit bigger and give it some divisions to make this deformed. So we have some divisions right now, and in here we need to make this so thick, and then we care about others as well. So let's make these a bit thicker, these thinner, and this thins out as it goes to the top. And this top one is the thinnest one as well. So this is good. And now let's bring a segment in here. And as always, let's keep a couple of segments in here and select these and bring them up. And to give it a bit of shape, let's first shade smooth and bring the solidify and solidify is good, and let's apply it. And now what we need to do is giving this the first level of subdivision surface. I'm going to make it simple and then add other subdivision surfaces and make this one Catmull Clark or whatever the name is. So let's look at the shape. I'm happy with it. And now there's something remaining, and that is giving this a bit of shape transition because it thins out as it goes to the top. Something like this. Okay, And for this part I really do not care because it's going to be baked out. Let's see. But I feel like this is a bit too smooth for what the reality is. So let's go in here, bring this one up, and I start to select this and give this a bevel. So let's select all of it and give it a bevel, a thick bevel, just to make that part pointy. See, it has made that pointy. So let's again come into here and make this one alright as well. This is not hard surface modeling. This is what the shape of that is really. And later on inside ZBrush we start to hit these edges and make them natural again. So this is about it. Let's drag a copy, and for this one I'm going to change the shape a bit. Let's turn on the proportional editing, and I'm going to make it a bit different to what the neighboring piece is, and make it bigger as well. Okay, and now I feel like I can smoothly make this part harder as well. Not so hard surface, but something that holds out. So bring this one. Let's look at the top, and it's all right here. But I'm going to take this, all of this, and shrink it down to make it flatten a bit in this side because it's not so deep in the end. So it's all about looking at the references. When you look enough at references, you get an idea of what you're going to do. Okay, this is about the stems, and now let's look at the leaves. If you look at the leaves, see the leaf is pretty simple and pretty something needly, something pointy, and really can be created using a single plane. So again, I'm going to take a single plane and resize it in X. Okay, and right away we can change the shape to something like that. Okay, it needs to be thick in the beginning and pointy at the end, something like this. But let's give this just a bit of random resizing. Okay, this is good. And now let's make this even pointier. You see, it's somehow connected, but I'm not going to weld them together. So let's give this a solidify and shade smooth and give this a smooth, simple, and then subdivision surface and give it enough resolution so that it holds out. So let's go to vertex mode, give it an edge in between, and remove the proportional editing for now. This is somehow the shape of it. But in here also let me apply that. And in here also we need to select this and shrink the size in here. Don't want to be so flat in there. So in here as well, and in here just a bit. And overall, I feel like this is too thick. Yeah, this one is good. Okay, and now let's copy triple of times. And now let's take these. Now I have the kit for the palm, and I'm going to batch rename these to set name palm. Okay, and give them a new collection and call them palm. And later on, I will take care of them when we start to go to ZBrush for detailing these out. So let's bring this in here. Looks like this one has been renamed wrongly. I don't care. Fix that later on. And let's go for the bark itself. There are a lot of ways to go about creating this bark. One way, I can go and create a simple cylinder and I start to displace it using a displacement map of the bark that we create inside Substance. That would be another way, but we can go and do modular in this one as well. You see, this one, if you look at it, it's like a collection of bowl being stacked on top of each other. You see, these are like simple bowls, simple dishes being stacked on top of each other after a dinner. And I'm sure you have seen something like that. And we can think about it that way. We can create some individual of these and then later on stack them on top of each other to create a bark. And this is another way to go about it. And now that I'm thinking, I'm really loving to go modular on this as well. I'm going to create some individual stripes and then stack them on top of each other, rotate them, scale them, shape them to create new identities as well. This way, I believe we can create a lot of tree variations from just some kits. So let's zoom on this and try to frame on that. Okay, now let's hide these two. And the main shape that we can use to create this is a cylinder. The easiest shape that I'm going to create. Okay, let's create a cylinder and of course shade smooth, and in the normals set the normal angle. Okay, this is the type of cylinder that I'm going for. You see, this cylinder is something like this but offsetted and edited to be like that. And if I look at the top of this cylinder, you see it's very ugly and gone, and I do not want that. Let's take this, delete it, take this and delete it, and go to the edge mode and bring the search menu and type for grid fill. And this grid fill somehow fills the polygon with some polygons and it tries its best to quantify it. So let's take this one and bring the search up. It brings the last action. Okay, and we have the base. Let's apply everything, and I'm going to put the pivot right in the center, which is this one. Okay, this is the base of it. And you see in here, some edges are displaced, some edges are been hit with trim smooth border. You see in here, we can easily do this effect using trim smooth border. In here, you see there are a lot of edge hitting in here. And there are some places where the height difference is so noticeable, for example like this one. So I'm going to create some from this and start to duplicate it around. So this one for the beginning, let's copy it over, and another one I'm going to create something like this. So let's give it a bit of height, and then I'm going to the box X-ray mode and try to give this a bit of height variation. Of course, later on we're gonna fix all of this inside ZBrush. When we start to smooth this out, you're gonna see that there's not a problem really in this area. So let's take this and bring this down. So something like this. Let's take this one, bring it here, and again give it a bit of height, and look at these to see which one we can create from. And you see in here all of them have some bevel in them. So let's take this, go to polygon mode, and in here bring this up to create that bevel effect for this. So go a step back and bring it up. And this is what they all have in common. You see in here, but there's a bit different. So let's take this and delete it and replace this as the simplest one. And you see these individual stripes start thinner at the bottom and become thicker at the top. Okay, perfectly something like this. And if we start to duplicate this on top of each other, you see we are easily able to create that effect that you see here. That's happening perfectly. So let's delete these and start to do some variations of this. Now that I have the basic shape, I really feel like I can bring this into ZBrush and detail that there. It's a lot easier to detail this inside ZBrush. Okay, I'm going to duplicate sometimes. Maybe 5 different ones is enough. Okay, and now let's bring the palm kit in here and duplicate these and bring them here. And by using this kit, we are able to create a palm tree only using these individual elements. And then let's look, and we have these banana trees. If you look at the shape of the leaves, you see the leaf is in its normal something like this, and in its most cleanest form is something like this, and in nature sometimes it turns down and becomes something like this. You see in garden there's something like this happening, and it's easy to create. We only need to create the first primary shape, which is this one, and through the texture usage we start to create these as well. Of course we may tier something in the geometry level as well. So let's go. We need to create the fern first, and the fern is perfect cylindrical. And now that I'm looking at it, it's just like the stem that you created for palm, and when it emerges into the leaf it changes the color. You see the color becomes brighter than the main thing. So let's take one of these, or let's go for ferns. This one is better. Let's take this one out and make it a bit thicker. Okay, this one is good for the banana ferns. And then let's mimic the shape of it. Let's go for a single plane, and we can basically make everything out of a single plane. We just need to have some proportions. So let's apply all and select the edges or vertices. Of course, give them some vertices, and then let's go for proportional editing and try to resize the shape. Okay, something like this, and on the top also something like this. Let me see if I can. Yeah, this one is going to be alright. But the edges are a bit too sharp. Let's take them, and I'm going to give them a chamfer or a bevel. Control B and then hit V to go into vertex mode. And this one is alright. Let's give it a center, and I can connect manually from here to here, confirm, and from here to here and confirm. So this one needs to come out a bit. Turn off the proportional editing. I don't want to affect the whole thing. Okay, something like this, and take these two out and bring them up as well. Okay, this is the initial shape of it, and then through the usages of ZBrush we're able to create something out of it. So shade smooth and give it a bit of solidify. I don't want it to be so much. Okay, and now subdivision surface. Make the first one simple and give some subdivisions next. And let's look at the shape. Okay, it's alright. And let's copy that some more time. And later on we may detail one and then copy that instead of this. But to make sure that we have them selected, I'm going to keep them for now so that I know how many variations should I create. Okay, let's take all of these, create a new collection, call it banana, and batch rename, of course, and make it banana as well. So let's bring these up. I'm going to place them right against each other, so when I import them into ZBrush I can select them without any problem. So select these, bring these out. Okay, this is the kit for these, and let's see what else we could create. And this one is remaining, and I believe we can really use the pawn kit to create this as well. It's just a pawn, but really not so grown. And I believe this is good for foliage. We can learn a lot of things from these. So now that I have the kit, let me bring these in the center and remove this because I really do not need it. And I can simply bring this into ZBrush and start to detail them out. And when we started to detail, then decimate them and bring them into Blender and start kit bashing just like the previous kits, just like the dog kit. And then make a lot of trees and things using these. Okay, see you in ZBrush. And before going to ZBrush, I thought that it's a great thing if we started to create some grasses as well, because these grass patches are the most common foliage types that you see in games. So let's go about creating some grass blades as well. So I'm taking these and I only want to give it some grass patch look. Okay, the normals need to be flipped. You select the face and hit Shift and N to recalculate the normals. Okay, the normals are alright. And now let's give this some vertices to work with. We need just some vertices. So, and let's take these and I'm going to work by the vertices and start to shrink them down, because you know the grass is thick at bottom and thin at the top. So I'm going to do that effect right now. So something like this. And grass patch is really no different than this one. Okay, I'm going to give this a bit of thickness so that it reads better inside normal map. So this one is done, and grass is no really harder than these. So as always, just give it a bit of thickness using solidify. You want just a bit, okay, so that you can read a lot inside, better inside normal map. Okay, and give it subdivision surface. For the first one, I'm giving it a simple, and for the second one, I'm giving the normal one. Okay, now we have our grass patch in here. It's alright. And for this part, we need to fix it inside ZBrush. We really do not care about it. So I'm going to create some grass patches, one healthy, one old, one in the middles. So we're going to create good amounts of grasses. So let's take this one, duplicate it, and I believe that I can really take 6 ones is enough. 2 new, 2 mid, and 2 old ones. And for now, it's good for creating those. Okay, let's batch rename these. And I'm going to set name to grass and give this their own collection and call them grass as well. So for now, I'm going to export these as a single FBX inside ZBrush to see if there's any topology problems. Some of them might need to be triangulated first before being exported to ZBrush. So I take them all and using the first normal FBX export and limit to selection and export FBX. Let me rename this foliage pack and export. And now let's import. Okay, this is it, and hit open, and hopefully we are not getting any errors. Okay, because all of it is triangulated and we have really no problem importing that. Okay, let me see that it's all right. Okay, we're now ready to start sculpting these foliages, and let me look at them, and all of them have been imported successfully. The naming is wrong, but I really do not care because we know what is going on here. So this is the banana kit, this is the grass kit, this is the fern kit, and this is the palm kit. And to start, I found out really I do not need this one. So let me go in here and delete it, because later on I can really mess these and create something like that. Okay, let's start creating. First, always try to keep couple of save files from your ZBrush file. Instead, something goes wrong, you really have something to go back to. I always try to keep some variations. You see, this is foliage 01. I try to keep couple of variations from my files, because ZBrush tends to crash sometimes and you really get hurt if you lose a lot of progress. So I always do something like this. You see, I have three versions of them, and I try to save on them every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, so that I do not lose a lot of progress if the ZBrush crashes and I lose my progress. Okay, have that in mind, and let's start sculpting. And for sculpting, the way I do, I really first try to shift click on this icon so that it hides all of them, and we have only one subtool to work with, and hit F so that it frames, and then it's centered on the screen so that you can only revolve around this. So for adding resolution, you really can go for Dynamesh or hitting Control and D to start giving this resolution. Because this is going to be a sculpted, I'm really going to for ZBrush because I need a lot of good topology in here so that my sculpt would become a lot better. So for blur, let's bring it down, and for resolution, let's give it a resolution of 1024, and this resolution, as you know, is dependent on the size of this model. And if I increase the size of this model and I start to dynamesh it on this resolution, I get different poly counts. So this didn't work. Let's go higher. And now it's good for adding some primitive details. So let's bring it higher. Okay, this is enough. And I believe I can really work with this. And I can smooth these parts out, or I can use the smooth from here, the polish, to polish this one just a bit so that the polygons go to their own places and I have a better topology to work with. Okay, for sculpting in ZBrush, I try to work with my paint tablet to get better results when sculpting. Okay, now that we know the basics of sculpting in ZBrush, and of course we have explained what these do and how to customize your window to better sculpt in ZBrush, we are really ready to sculpt on. And I tend to use a lot of alpha maps to sculpt in ZBrush when I'm sculpting. Okay, let's go about creating some alpha maps to help us during the sculpting process. And I either create my alphas inside Substance Painter or Designer or Photoshop. In this case, I'm going to create the alphas inside Substance Designer because it's the best when creating the alphas from scratch. Okay, let's come in here. We want to create a substance graph, and let's go for this metallic roughness and call this one height maps. Okay, it created that for us. We really do not care about these outputs because we're only going to export a black and white alpha from this to be able to sculpt inside ZBrush. And the most important factor when it comes to creating alphas or basically anything is looking at references to see what we come up with. And by looking at this reference port, the first thing that I get is this horizontal and vertical noise lines that we see in here. So I'm going to create that. And you see these parts are not flat really. These single planes are not flat. They come out and go in. And it's really a quality of those. So I believe this one is great when it comes to creating those noise for that part. You see, it comes out and it goes in. And this black and white data is in the parts of whiting, it comes out, and in the parts where it's black, it's going in. And you see, it perfectly matches the thing that we wanted. But it's a bit too noisy, so let's come in here and give it a bit of blur. Blur high quality grayscale, put the quality to 1, and bring this one down a bit. And before this one, I can give it an auto level so that we are using the full range of black and white. Okay, this is it. And now the noise is a bit too CG. You see, there's nothing really going on in terms of value differentiation. Let's add a slow blur grayscale And this slow blur grayscale really helps us in adding those chippiness and sculpting value when we work with the trim smooth border brush. So let's come in here, and I really love this cloud to noise, and let's add this to the mix. And this one is really has turned into something like ice, and to make it right we need to bring the samples all the way to up and make this one min, so that it creates subtracting effect out of that, and bring this value down a bit. And you see it starts to chip away a lot of these areas, which I really love. So let's test this to see what we come up with inside ZBrush. And to export this, I really can use this save icon in here instead of plugging it into an output and try to output from there. Of course, if you use the output and if you change something, you can really re-export using a single button, but for now I'm going to use this save icon. And I think for the height maps, the best possible resolution we can get from PSD and TIFF. So for now I'm going for TIFF, and let's call this one Bark 01, and then test it out inside ZBrush. Okay, we're here. Let's smooth these parts out just a bit, so that when we import that we're able to see the quality of that. So for using alpha, I always go and drag rectangle, and for alpha let's go select alpha and import. And now we can select this, and using the drag alpha we are able to drag into here, and you see how perfectly it starts to displace the geometry for us. And since this one is a natural thing, really can go a far way into creating high quality details. So this one is a good starting point. And if I look at it from far away, you see it has added a lot of differentiation inside here. And for these parts, it's really not a problem, because the first thing, the player isn't going to be seeing this part because it's going to be hidden. And the second thing is that we can really trim smooth this out. So I'm really happy with how this is turning out. So let's go a couple of steps back and use a couple of settings. Let me increase the intensity so that I can displace this even more. Okay, you see the displacement here is really perfect and added a lot of detail in here. So if you want to avoid it from affecting other areas, you simply affect the back face mask and start to drag your alpha, and you see it doesn't affect other areas no more. So let's try to drag out, and if you look at it from the top view, you see it added a lot of differentiation from the previous one. So let's in here try to add some more noise, and now let's look at it from all sides. It's perfect. It has added a lot of value to that. And to make this, if you look at the polygon distribution, you see the polygons in here are a lot messy compared to the areas that are untouched. So let's go back and hit Dynamesh again, and we have activated the Dynamesh. To make Dynamesh again, you simply control and drag into the viewport. Now if you look at the polygon distribution, you see the polygon distribution has become a lot better. Okay, this is really fine. I'm happy with how the details it's adding to the mix. And one more thing, let's look at the references to see what we come up with. And you see in these areas there's something, a bit of fluffiness in here. You see there are a lot of single points coming out and going in, and for these areas it's a perfect thing to start creating that inside Substance. Okay, let's take this and select this and right click and add a frame and call it 01 or whatever you want to name it. So for that, let me see, I can really work with this black and white data. And of course we can go and use this dirt, for example. This is also fine, and the sky is the limit on how far you really can go and pick up from these fine details that Substance Painter and Designer has to offer. You can use a lot of them and you can basically get the same result every time. So I'm going to use this, and let's go blur it a bit because I really do not want it to be so intensive. The blur is very much. I'm going to bring this down just a bit, really just a bit, and let's compare it before and after. So it added a bit of blur, and then again I'm going to add a slope blur grayscale to give it a bit of a sculptingness into that. So again, let's select this cloud noise and bring it here. Bring the samples all the way to up and intensity down. Okay, and now let's save this one as well. So let's call this dot noise, and let's go to ZBrush and start to pick up that. Okay, this is the dot noise, and if I try to drag it in here, it's very noisy, so it means that I have to bring the intensity down. Not so much. Let's go for something like 10, and you see how much resolution it starts to add. Of course, we need to bring the resolution on this one up to make sure that we get the best. And of course, you can hold down Alt and drag in to make the effect subtractive. You see, it has now started to carve into the place instead of adding. You see, if I compare them side by side, this is the effect of them coming out, and this is the effect of them going in. And you see in these areas it's going in, and in these areas it's coming out. It's perfect, really perfect. I'm happy with it. And the good thing is that if you do not close ZBrush or get crashed or something, the alpha is going to be stacked in here and you can use that. Okay, let's try to add some of it, and it's perfect for adding those normal map details. Okay, this is good. And now let's go for something just like a knife. I really want to be able to sculpt really sharp lines in here. Of course, you can really go for damn standard brush, which I have created a shortcut in here. But if you want to create from the menu in here, you simply hold B and hit D, and you can see the damn standard brush in here. And let's use this to see what it creates. I really want to be able to create some sharp lines like this, but in shape of an alpha so that I can drag it and no more problems. Okay, let's go in here and create a frame for this and call it 02. Really, naming doesn't matter. I really want to differentiate. So in here, let's see this waveform. For the wave number, I really want to bring it down to 1, and let's bring this down because I do not want it to be so thick. I really want some tiny lines. Okay, this one is alright. Let's make it a bit thicker, and for the noise, let's bring the noise down also, and the pattern, yeah, something like this, and bring this up. I really love this noise. Okay, and now let's drag a node out, and again I'm going to add a blur's gray blur slope, not a blur slope, the blur high quality grayscale. Bring the quality down and bring this one right in here to add a bit of blur. And of course you can add a blend, and in here blend this with the previous one back, okay, and put the mode to something like multiply, and let's compare this before and after. You see it has added a bit of noise in here, a bit of randomization in height. It doesn't start from 0 all the way to white. It gives a bit of buffer zone, and if you want to make this buffer zone bigger, you go and bring the intensity up. And of course there's a node called bevel. I believe you can achieve the same effect using bevels. So let's create the bevel and bring this here, and this is basically what you can get from that. Let's compare them side by side. You see this happening in here, but I'm really happier with this one. Of course, you can manipulate the bevel to get something more, but I really love this one out. So to give it a bit of more sculpting, a slow blur grayscale, and let's give it a noise so that the noise sculpt this. So let's go for plasma, and this Perlin noise are good for adding a sculpt also, because if you look at the scale, you can really bring this down, or you can tile it so much. So let's add it to the mix, samples up, blur, and bring the intensity down. And let's bring it up just a bit. You see it starts to hit a lot of these edges, and it saves a lot of time in ZBrush. We really do not have to do that. So if you come in here and start to increase or decrease, you see the more you tile it, the more noise it's going to add in here. Let's see this. You see this white area hits the edge like this. So let's bring the samples just like here, and I'm going to add a noise which is a bit more finer. This Perlin noise is so CG. Let's go for the same clouds too, and it adds a lot of finer noise in here, and I'm really happy with this. It's good for those natural bits. And of course you can go for blur or max. This max starts to go beyond the borders. This min starts to chip only the borders, and this blur is something in between. So I'm happy a lot with the min only. So this white is coming out, but I want the effect to go in. So to reverse the effect, you simply can add invert grayscale to be something like this, or you can export the same one into ZBrush and start to hold down Alt and try to sculpt. So let's take this and call it damage line. Okay, now in here, let's go to our standard brush, and in the alpha in here, let's bring this damage line. And if I try to drag it in, you see it's coming out. But to reverse the effect, I can hold down Alt and drag in. Or for this one, I really can increase the effect, hold down Alt, and you see it starts to really chip away into the object. Let's disable the backface calling for this, and you will see the effect and how much it can affect. But let's bring the strength down. Something like this is alright. So let's bring an area and start to paint this. You see, it starts to chip away into the surface, and I'm really happy with the effect. Okay, this one and here, on this one as well. Just I want to be so random about this. Okay, now that I'm looking at this, it starts to look a lot more naturalistic. And on this part also, the player isn't going to be seeing, but I'm going to add some surface noise in here as well. Okay, this is it. And now let's increase the resolution on Dynamesh and bring it all the way to top, 496, and try to pre-Dynamesh again to get a lot of resolution. Okay, it's not giving us something more than this, so I have to hit Control and D to give this a bit of more resolution to work with. Okay, and now I want to make these edges so sharp. There's an option in here which called the pinch brush. You can take this pinch brush and start to hit on these edges to make them so sharp. And you see it pinched the edges a lot. And now let's go and pinch some edges, and then later on I'll be hitting these edges a lot with the trim smooth border to make them look really right. Okay, this one as well. Let's pinch them, but not so much because it tries to distribute the topology towards the edge and makes it pinched. So something like this. Do not be so sharp on it, just give it a bit of pinchingness on this part as well. And looks like all of the edges have been pinched. And my favorite brush of all time, trim smooth border. Okay, let's give it a white alpha so that it becomes a lot more aggressive and start to hit the edges to make them really shine. So let's hit the edges. Okay, and these edges really can bevel them, and in the normal map they read a lot better when you hit them with the trim smooth border, and it starts to flatten the area just a bit and also make the normal map read a lot smoother and delete some of the noises out. And you can really sculpt a lot of things using this smooth border, trim smooth border brush only, using the additive mode and subtractive mode. Okay, let's say that I'm happy with this, and now I can really use a move brush BMV to bring up the move brush and make it a bit bigger and start to make the silhouette a bit more different in all sides. Because if you look at the reference images, it's really wavy on some parts. Okay, something like this. And let's look at the references. You see there are a lot of waviness in here as well, which you can really create by using the move brush. And this move brush is perfect for that. So I feel like the silhouette on this one is good and random, and I can go and bring the standard brush to use some alphas in here. So let's bring this one and I start to hit on here, and I'm going to enable the back face masking as well. So let's give it some noise and make it smooth as well. And of course I can bring this dot noise and try to hit these parts as well. But it's too noisy. Let's bring the intensity down and try to paint on these parts, and this part isn't really going to be seen by the player because when we stack these on top of each other, they're not really going to be seen. But I'm going to add the details in case just something happens. Let's make this flat and bring another layer to give this really high resolution. Okay, and I can really add resolution on this part as well. Let's take these, and I'm going to be so subtle and not so noisy about this because I do not want it to make noisy all over the place. Just a bit of noise, not so. Okay, just drag slightly to make it more high resolution in close-ups. Okay, and now let's go and bring the trim smooth border and I start to chip away some of the areas. Okay, I feel like trim smooth border really doesn't work on this. So let's go for the next one. And I'm going to do the same as well. So let's take this, bring it up. You can hide this one or you can keep it for the reference. So I'm going to keep this and let's go for a higher resolution on this. Bring the blur down and hit Dynamesh. Okay, we have good amount of resolution in here. Let's polish it. Okay, and now I can bring the move brush P, M, and V to try to break the silhouette a bit. And I'm going to keep this so that I'm not going to make this like that. So let's pick this. It's too strong. Just take this. And something like this is okay. Okay, I'm happy with how this is going. And now I can bring the standard brush with the rectangle one to give this a bit of detail. Okay, let's make it stronger even more. Okay, on all sides try to give it detail. Okay, it's very good in terms of noise. And now I can bring another noise which is this dot noise and I can hide that totally. Too strong, too low. So let's give this overall noise in here as well. And let's go to 496 and try to drag the Dynamesh to give it a bit more resolution and give it a couple of more division in geometry as well to make it fairly noisy. So let's add the noise. Let's make the noise a bit weaker and start to add some overall noise in here. And let's make the noise finer a bit. Something like this. Okay? And try to drag small bits of noise all the way to complete the full circle. Okay, and this noise that we created inside substance, this noise that is adding the bark quality to this one is very good and adding a lot of high quality details in here. And it really made us not really need to do a lot of sculpting. Okay, and now let's go for this one again and try to hit on these areas to give it a bit of detail. And let's smooth it out just a tiny bit and make it stronger and try to hit on these areas to give it a bit of detail. And as you know, it's not going to be seen by the player, but we are going to add details anyhow. So on this part as well, I'm not going to really affect the side part. I'm only going to affect the middle part only. So this one is done as well. And later on, when we made sure that the quality is fine, we create a decimated version of this and then UV it inside Blender and then go and texture it alongside others as well inside Substance. Okay, let's bring this damaged line. Okay, just some regular noise in here. This was too strong. Of course, it's too strong. Let's give it some noise. Okay. And one for here. Okay, this one is all right. And let's go for the next one. Let's see where it is. And looks like there's nothing in here. Let's delete this. It was an empty. Okay, let's take this and start to detail this one out. So as always, bring the Dynamesh up and blur down and hit Dynamesh and hit some polish. And for the first thing, I'm going to add this noise. Let's first smooth it out just a bit. And before adding this, let's go for the move brush and start to hit the silhouette just a bit. And this one is alright. And now let's go for the standard brush. Of course, you can use any brush, for example, clay brush, clay buildup, and any brush and assign alpha to them. But I feel like a standard brush is good for this purpose. And bring the intensity up and start to displace the geometry using the alpha. Okay, this one is good now, and now I can hide this because I really do not need it. And let's start to give these a bit of detail even. And this bottom part as well. And now let's bring this all the way to 1496 4K and give it another Dynamesh and give this some more resolution to work with. For these tiny alphas, it works alright. So this one is too strong for now. Let's bring this and start to add some finer noises so that it reads better inside here. So for these parts as well, let's give it some noise. It's auto saving. Let me give this a bit of subtle noise in here. You see, it makes it even more high quality inside when close-ups. Okay, I'm trying to be random on this and try to paste noise on any direction that I see. Let's zoom. You see how high quality it has become. Okay, this part is done as well. Let's give it a bit of noise in here, but not so much, just a subtle bit. And now let's add another layer to make it good. Okay, the third one done. And now I believe this one will conclude it for the bark pieces. Let's give it Dynamesh again as always and polish it a bit and give it a bit of hand smooth and bring the move brush to change the silhouette a bit. And now let's go at these to see them. You see, everyone is different in terms of silhouette, and I'm going to do the same for this as well. So let's bring this one up, down, up, up, and the silhouette of this one is simple for itself. And now let's bring the standard brush to start adding those details. Okay, this one is the last one in this row. And next we're going to create the stems as well. So give it a bit of noise, and you see how beautiful this noise is doing the work by only creating one single noise, one alpha map. It really saved us a lot of trouble in terms of sculpting. We wanted to go and start to hand place a lot of details, but using a single noise and choosing it wisely, we really were able to bypass a lot of noise and a lot of noise creation process inside ZBrush. So let's bring this one down a bit. And on this one, I'm going to be a bit more radical. So this one is alright as well. And let's give it in this direction, Dynamesh it, and bring the Dynamesh to 4K. And every time you Dynamesh, it's going to blur it just a bit, but not so huge problem. But the polygon distribution is going to be corrected. And when you drag the noises, you're not really getting all sorts of troubles. So bring this dot noise, and it's too strong, I can tell already. And try to paste some noises in here and some noises in the bottom. And some noises overall. Okay, this is done. And now let's pick up this noise and try to make some lines in the between. So this is too strong. I'm not using this noise really. I really do not need it. These ones are doing the job perfectly. So now that I look at this, I have good amounts of variation in terms of barks. And using these only, I'm able to create a lot of palm trees only using these 4 barks. And I'm really happy with them. And now it's time to go and reveal all of them to see what we're going to go next. So the bark kit is done, and I can go ahead and I start to add detail on these palm stem and palm needles as well. Okay, I believe this is good for this session, and in the next session we're going to sculpt these as well. Okay, see you in the next session.